When I close my eyes, all I see is plants. I have been on a planting marathon. The greenhouse is totally changed over. So as you can see, I've got tons of these big pots now, most of which are peppers and eggplant. That's because I finally had the room since I transplanted everything that's been being babied in here outside. So I'm gonna do a quick little garden tour, but while we're doing a tour, I'll take you through some of my favorite planting tips when you're doing transplants so that they have the best chance of success. These are all my peppers. I've got pretty much one of everything. In the back corner is going to be rattlesnake beans and Malabar spinach, and then in here I did a patty pan squash that can kind of trail down the side. I still have room down this end, so I'm probably gonna do smaller plants and like microgreens here. I totally wasn't thinking that the Malabar spinach seeds are actually the berries that the plant makes, so when I went to soak them for 24 hours before I planted them, I was very pleasantly surprised. Tea garden that we planted out last week is looking great. Everything is getting ready to bloom again. Look at all of these buds. Everything transplanted really well, so no concerns there. I did add this Elysium, which is edible for tea as well, and just added some yellow to our kind of like orange and red bed. The Elysium was a clearance plant. Unless a plant has like severe root rot, generally speaking, the plants that you find in the clearance section are there because they're not blooming as well. They don't look as pretty in that moment, but usually they bounce right back. So I've gotten some really great deals there, and I've never had any issues with transplanting them in. Our tomato beds are fully planted out, and so these are gonna look a lot smaller to you probably than you might expect for a tomato, and there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, they're dwarf indeterminate tomatoes, so they overall have a much smaller growth habit to begin with, which is why I planted them, because they're going to be way less work to keep up with for pruning and trellising and all of that. And if you remember, I did dwarf brandy freds, rosella, lemon ice, and blazing beauty. Also stuck some tomatillos in here that I impulse bought. The other reason that they look so small is that the vast majority of the plant is actually buried underneath the surface of the soil. Because tomatoes actually will form new roots along their stem, I planted them very, very deep, removing all but the topmost leaves so that they could develop a stronger, deeper root system. Interplanted in this bed are King Richard leeks, Tokyo scallions, some late season arugula, and lettuce that will end up coming out over the next couple of weeks, and marigolds. The Thirsty Earth OLLA system is working overtime. It's working so well. So well. This is like a genius system. I will link it down below. I fill this once a week with rainwater collected from that bucket, and it just slowly fills all these little cups throughout the week, so everything is evenly watered. Surface is going to look dry, of course, but as soon as you get right below that, it's nice and damp. These beds are where the majority of the activity happened over the last couple of days of planting. I got all of my peppers in, all of my eggplant in, and all of my cucumbers in. Peppers, the only thing that I really do is as I'm planting them, I'm looking out for any little flower buds that might be on the plant, because as exciting as it would be to have really early peppers on my plants, I know that that's causing the plant to direct energy into fruiting when it needs to be focused on establishing that strong root system. So I always pluck those right off. And cucumbers can be a little bit tricky to do as a transplant because they have very sensitive roots. So if you're not careful when you're transplanting them out, it can cause you to get lower yields or even the yields to be more bitter. I'm planting suyo, my favorite type of cucumber, Marketmore, which is a classic, and lemon cucumbers. And what I did was that I planted them up against these trellises, which currently have snap peas just starting to grow on them. And the idea is that I'm succession planting these so that by the time the snap peas are fully finished, the cucumbers will be ready to take over. On top of being really gentle with the cucumber roots as we're transplanting, looking out for the direction that that first true leaf is facing will help the plant train in the direction that you want it to actually grow in. And the same is true for melons and for squash as well. I did throw the eggplant in these front beds, and the reason that I did that was because eggplants in particular are really sensitive to high winds, which you get a lot of from that field. So my hope is that once everything kind of grows up, it will create a shield or a wall that will protect those eggplant from the harshest winds. Just something to keep in mind as you're planning where to put your eggplant, as that can increase your yields if you can give them some protection. These front beds are kind of a crazy mishmash, but look at that beautiful lettuce. It's too pretty, I don't even want to pick it. I always line the front with pansies just to get me some early color. I did also direct sow a bunch of flower seeds. So there's going to be cosmos coming up in here, California giant zinnias, and dwarf teddy bear sunflowers, which all get pretty tall, and I'm totally okay with that. Even though these beds are elevated, I really want to add those flowers in that color that I didn't have in here last year, and I think it'll be totally worth having that additional height. Spacing is really important in these beds. I do plant pretty intensively though, with my larger stuff on the outside edges, and then I like to create what I call a spine down the center of other beneficial plants. So right now I've got Swiss chard in here and dill, and these are my transplanted squashes. These are the Lakota squashes. Look how huge they are in comparison to, like, I think this is the honey nut that was planted at the same time. Creating a spine of kind of beneficial plants can help anchor the garden with pollinators and keep those trap crops really close by to where they need to be. And just as a classic do as I say, not as I do, I ended up planting all of these on a really sunny day. And plants are going through kind of a stressful experience when you transplant them. So if you have the option to plant on an overcast day, you should definitely do that, because it just gives them that additional moment of rest where they have to kind of contend with all of the elements. These plants were also already hardened off, and so they've been exposed to the outside for a couple of weeks now over an increasing period of time every single day. So that's why I didn't really see much transplant shock, even though I put them out in direct sunlight. I have noticed a huge difference if I don't water my plants in, however. So as soon as I plant them, no matter how damp the root ball is or the surrounding soil, I always give them a quick drink. If I don't do this, I inevitably experience the classic signs of transplant shock. We get the wilting, stunted growth, always watering things in. My eyes were bigger than my stomach on these. I've got 3 extra tomatoes, an extra eggplant, 3 squash here, a bunch of squash here that I need to find a home for. I was actually concerned I had significantly overplanted because I was really not sure how much space I was going to have in the greenhouse for plants, so I planted a lot more than I thought I would need, and I really don't have that many extra, and I can always give them away. We're having the worst ant problem right now. They're everywhere. I don't know what to do. I've heard cedar oil can be effective, so I may give that a try, but it's kind of expensive. So if any of you have tried that, please let me know, because I definitely need to do something, and something that isn't going to harm the other wildlife and natural insects that we want around here. I don't mind ants. They aerate the soil. They're generally pretty harmless, except when it comes to the fruit trees and them eating the fruit off of it. But this is like excessive, and a lot of them are like biting ants, and you can't walk across this part of the yard that's still like dirt right now without getting ants on you. And that's partially our fault, because the land was excavated when we put in all this gravel. We're still just trying to get it back to normal with green stuff, not grass. I put in clover, and I think that once that starts to grow in, it will help quite a bit. But in the meantime, I need a solution. I also wanted to show you guys this. Have you seen this seed snail thing that's going around? It's going viral on Instagram. I'm calling it a seed sushi. I totally see how it could be really effective. I'm testing it out right now. We'll see how it does. But it's a really great kind of plastic-free way to get some seeds started. I'm just testing it with lettuce right now. I can see it being less disruptive to the roots on something that's maybe more tender. I cannot believe how much stuff I got in the ground in the last 24 hours. I think I really just only have a few like little things like extras that I want to pop in, like some flower seeds basically. I did want to talk about something a little bit more serious for a minute. There's been a lot of discussion in the garden community in the last couple of weeks about chaos gardening, and some really negative stuff has been going around that I think is like really harmful and kind of shaming other gardeners for trying different experimental methods that may work for them. I think one of the main goals for me is that everybody should be able to garden if they want to, and that we should find a way to make it enjoyable for everyone so that they do want to. So accessibility in general, we talk about a lot, of course, in terms of the physical accessibility, but making things accessible in terms of making them fun is just as important. And when we start telling people, oh, like chaos gardening doesn't work, this is just a grab for attention, there's better ways, it's a waste of time. First of all, that's categorically untrue. Chaos gardening does work. And second of all, it's just unnecessarily shaming people for playing in the garden. And I think we should all be inviting ourselves to play in the garden more and experiment, because that's where I've found the most rewarding experiences, is with trying something new that I came up with on my own. And how rewarding does that feel when it actually works? And even when it doesn't work, it's rewarding because we learned something. Anyway, I think everyone should have access to whatever makes gardening accessible for them. And Why are we taking gardening so seriously anyway? Like, this is supposed to be fun. I know some people out there are growing their own food to sustain themselves, but gardening as a hobby overall, it's supposed to be fun. So do whatever makes you happy in the garden. And if that's chaos gardening, like it is for me and many other gardeners, don't let anybody stop you. Anyway, this is my view today. This beautiful, beautiful garden that I have been waiting months and months to see filled out and lush again. I did have somebody mention that they were worried, they were asking me why I was willing to let this take up space in the garden bed. It doesn't take up any space. Like, it is flush with the dirt here, so it's not preventing me from growing more food. It's not like making me lose space to have these ledges here, and in fact, I've found them to be incredibly beneficial for like resting tools or whatever I have. I threw our sad little okra in the top here, and then I've got some Swiss chard transplants. I'm curious to see how these do because they were multi-sown very tightly in the pack, which can sometimes stunt the growth. I think I also have some beets in here. This row has some peppers, and the bottom row has some eggplant and then our bok choy. And I don't know if you watched the video of me when I was setting up this green stock, but I spilled a bunch of seeds and they did self-sow right in the gravel. I don't know, that seems like some pretty successful chaos gardening to me. These were free. If you've never heard of this is not an ad, but there's this website called Chip Drop, and you just put in your address, and if there's like a local arborist in town, they have to pay to dispose of their wood chips, so it actually benefits them to just drop them off in your yard. So I was so excited for that because I still have to mulch around those fruit trees. Well, I am beat. I have just been go, go, go. But I just wanted to visit with you really quickly and tell you what's going on in the garden and give you some tips that were coming to me as I was planting things. I think I'll leave you with some calming planting videos. I hope you can take some time out of your day to just enjoy the peaceful sounds of nature. As always, thank you so much for gardening with me, and happy growing.